Who could have predicted this? You know, I hate to say it, folks, but if I'm going to say it, I'm going to say it right. In the immortal words of Ricky from Trailer Park Boys, I told you so, or I told you so in the common tongue. What's happening, everybody? Justin, Bridgewater's finest on YouTube, Blockbuster_guy on Twitter. Not fueled today by Nerd Tees because I'm waiting for my new Nerd Tees order to show up, but you know what? They're still here with me in spirit. So, somebody made a little noise last night. Round 1 of the National Football League draft is in the books, and my Green Bay Packers originally had the number 30 overall selection in the first round, of course, by virtue of making it to the NFC Championship game, the result of which we don't talk about except in group therapy sessions. The Green Bay Packers trade up from 30 to 26, parlaying the number 30th overall pick as well as, I believe, a fourth rounder that was actually closer to the supplementary picks than it was to being a third rounder. So a late pick plus the 30th overall pick to move up to the number 26 overall pick, which was owned by the Miami Dolphins, in order to select quarterback Jordan Love. It's almost as if that's exactly what I told you was going to happen a few weeks ago, except they didn't have to trade up nearly as far as I had them moving up in the mock. Now, naturally, the selection of Jordan Love and the trading up to select Jordan Love was met with what the internet meets most things with, which is angry confusion or confused anger. I often misplace the two. So there's obviously a couple of things to unpack here. Let's start with the trading up. Trading up from 30 to 26. Not something that Green Bay is unfamiliar with, but something that did take people by surprise. I firmly believe that there were teams at the beginning of the second round that were looking to trade up into the first in order to draft Jordan Love. And I think the team that those teams were talking to were the Seattle Seahawks. Seattle loves to trade down. They do it constantly. If Jordan Love was really the player that the Green Bay Packers wanted, which I told you he was the player that they wanted, they need to get ahead of that Seattle pick because that is the one at risk. If you'll remember, if you watched last night, it was basically right down to the wire. Like, if you're watching Adam Schefter's Twitter, Schefter, like, just before Seattle makes their pick, is like, no trade. There is no trade. Seattle is not trading the pick. Seattle is making the pick. That indicates to me that right up until the wire, they were on the phone with teams. So Green Bay moves up one pick ahead of the 27th pick, the pick that was in question. They move one ahead to number 26, and Miami, who had already had an excellent draft to that point and continues to, had absolutely no problem doing that. And here's why I am not at all upset with this move. As a matter of fact, I think it's the right move for the franchise. Only about 10% of fourth round picks that have been drafted in the last, I believe it was 20 years, only about 10% of them ever actually become starters in the NFL, and only about 6% of them have a career in excess of 80 games. So, I mean, to trade a fourth round prospect, a magic bean, essentially, in order to move up to really get the player that you want for the real future of your franchise, guys, that's nothing. They drafted Jordan Love for the next 10 years of the franchise, not for 2020. Now, people are very quick to point out, like, Marquez Valdez-Scantling is this team's number 2 wide receiver. You brought in Devin Funchess, but who knows what he's actually going to provide. Basically, your offense from a passing perspective right now is Devontae Adams and a bunch of maybes. Why wouldn't you have gone wide receiver? I understand that, and there were some good wide receiver prospects to be had just by staying put at the 30th overall pick. But from my perspective, there's not a wide receiver 2/wide receiver 3 that was available immediately for 2020. Like, you could say, okay, let's have MVS or Funchess be our number 2, and let's assume if it's Funchess, let's assume he stays healthy, because the argument for the Packers always seems to hinge on, well, they were in the NFC Championship game last year. They're like one piece away from a championship. As much as this Packers fan would like to believe that, when you look at the Packers analytics from last year, I think they're much closer to like a 10-win team. Like, they were 13-3 last year. Look, they're a good football team. Don't get me wrong. They're like, this is my team. I love the Packers. They're a good football team. I didn't necessarily think they were a 13-win football team. I think they lucked into some of that. So this perception that they're like possibly the second best team in the NFC, I'm a fan of them. I just don't believe that. They're good enough to moonwalk into winning their division this year because everybody else in the NFC North got worse. So I certainly think the Packers are going to win the division again this year. I think they get to double-digit wins. I just don't necessarily think they're that like 13, 14 win powerhouse in the NFC, at least not yet. That's why taking a pick like Jordan Love, which plans not only for the immediate future should something happen to your starting quarterback, heaven forfend, but it plans for the next 10 years. This fan base needs to worry about the next 10 years because after Aaron Rodgers leaves, look, we've been kind of spoiled. We've had like 25 years here of elite top-end quarterbacks, Brett Favre and then Aaron Rodgers. We've been very, very blessed. But once Aaron Rodgers is done, and he's probably got 2 good years left, once he's done, who's there? Like, who's the next guy? This team doesn't need to be bad and awful and pick in the top 5 to get their next franchise quarterback. What they need is exactly what they did, which is planning for a problem before it's a problem. It's being proactive rather than being reactive. What this pick does is it allows Jordan Love to do exactly what Aaron Rodgers did. And I'm not comparing the two prospect-wise. Aaron Rodgers was like a top 5 talent prospect that somehow just plummeted to Green Bay at pick 25 or something like that. I'm not directly comparing the two, but it does allow Jordan Love to sit behind an elite quarterback. Learn how to be an NFL player. Learn how to be a professional. Sit under the proverbial learning tree of somebody that's going to go to Canton, Ohio and be an NFL Hall of Famer someday. Just to sit there and learn and absorb from a player like that. And it's going to make Jordan Love a much better pro than he would be in some other situations where maybe Jordan Love is competing to be the starting quarterback next year. Proactivity versus reactivity at the most important position in football is what the Green Bay Packers are going for here, and I'm very happy that that's what they did. Also, it's aggravating to me that people are talking about Jordan Love as if he's Deshaun Kaiser or as if he's Brett Hundley, and Brett Hundley's got all kinds of other problems that he's dealing with, but they're talking about Jordan Love like he's those players. He's better than those players were when they came out of college. I would say he's arguably better than both of those players right now. He's a better prospect with a higher ceiling than those players. And speaking of higher ceilings, there was also the argument to say, well, Green Bay should have taken the wide receiver where they were sitting, and then when the second round comes around, target a guy like Jake Fromm or Jalen Hurts, depending on where Jalen Hurts is going to go. I get it, once again. But if you're talking about, once again, ceiling and floor, comparing Jordan Love to any of those prospects, Jordan Love is the best prospect, and he was there to be had at a very small price to move ahead of where the Packers were sitting. I had to pull my laptop screen up here because I wanted to refer to something very quickly. I full well agree that the Green Bay Packers need wide receiver help. They absolutely do. The next pick that they have in the draft is pick number 62. Right now, on the board, in terms of wide receiver talent, Hamler is still there, Mims is still there, Pittman is still there. Now, I expect those players to go relatively early today in the second round, but there's a trade-up possibility there. Green Bay could dip into their draft equity for next year, move up in the second round if they really covet one of those players. If they don't, they're going to be in position with the 62nd pick to grab Edwards, Johnson, Jennings. There are wide receivers at their position that if they don't get their hands on one of those top guys kind of continuing to fall down the board, there's going to be a wide receiver, a good wide receiver talent, somebody that could step in as the 4th wide receiver on this team next year. Folks, at the end of the day, this is far from the end of the world. And anyone that you see on social media or wherever that is decrying Jordan Love as the worst draft pick of the first round needs to have their heads examined. Short-sightedness is not a crime, but it also isn't fair. And it's not fair to Jordan Love. It's not fair to the talent that this player is going to be in 2 to 3 years' time when we really need him to be that. And when that time comes around and the time has come that it's no longer Aaron Rodgers' show, Father Time gets us all. I'm 35. Father Time gets us all. When Father Time gets Aaron Rodgers, all of a sudden we got another pro, a 3-year professional quarterback, a 2-year professional quarterback, whatever, to step in and be the starting quarterback for the Green Bay Packers and hopefully continue this generational success that the Green Bay Packers have more often than not been able to find in the NFL. So listen, that's my argument. I really liked the Jordan Love pick. I wouldn't have put it in my mock draft if I didn't like it. As far as I'm concerned, they got an excellent value in Jordan Love at 26 overall last night in the first round. But maybe I didn't convince you. What do you think of the pick? What do you think of trading up? What do you think of the other options that Green Bay could have had in their positions? All of that, put it in the comments section below. That's it for me, Justin, Bridgewater's Finest on YouTube, Blockbuster_guy on Twitter. Hopefully sooner rather than later, I will once again be fueled by the incredible folks at NerdTees. But make sure you go to nerdtees.ca where you can still use my promo code BWFinest. Save yourself some money on some delicious, delicious tea blends, just like I did yesterday. And hey, second round of the draft is tonight. I'm looking forward to seeing what happens on night number 2.